Hey guys, Frank Spencer, Mr. Chatsworth here, and I have a question for you. Has California declared war on landlords? Stay tuned. We'll discuss that and dive deep into my reasons for asking it in just a short minute. So it seems to me that California lawmakers are either doubling down on or repeating mistakes that they've made in the past when it comes to rental properties and landlords and um, how they manage and control both the use and the cost and uh, and charges for using the property. There have been a couple laws that have passed that recently that are just going to make it worse. Um, let me explain. First, we have Senate Bill 567, and Senate Bill 567 makes it more difficult for a landlord at the end of the lease to cancel the lease, not renew it, and then take the property over for their own personal use or for the use of a family member, a child, or a sibling or some other relative. It requires that they move in within a certain period of time, that they live in the property for at least a year after non-renewal of the lease, before they go back on the market as a rental or back on the market for sale. And the time frame for them to move in is so restrictive that the reality is they may not even have time to rehab the house and make it suitable for the new occupancy of the owner or their family member, creating even more problems. So that being said, these challenges are doing the exact opposite of what we need. And I'll go into that a little bit deeper, but first I want to then add the conversation about AB12. And it prevents the landlords from asking for more than a month's rent for a security deposit. And the idea is that asking for more than a month's rent can be actually pose a challenge for those who are less qualified to rent, have marginally poor credit or marginal credit in general, marginal income, and so on, and that this, by restricting the amount of the deposit, will allow for the a tenant to be able to qualify to get in easier. Let's start with AB12 first and talk about that. I would suggest to you that the exact opposite is the probable outcome. Faced with the ability of only charging a single month's rent, I may not consider the less qualified tenant as a potential applicant for my property. If I'm the landlord, I may look to only the most highly qualified tenants as I consider applications coming in. What other choice do I have? And that additional security deposit, while maybe a little bit restrictive, provided an opportunity for a marginally qualified tenant to get into a property, reestablish their rental history, and pay their rent on time, and build their qualifications for future rentals. May be more difficult. When you look at bills like 567, Senate Bill 567, Assembly Bill 12. You have to understand that this doesn't make it easier for landlords. Uh, I'm sorry, for tenants to get into a property. It doesn't lower the cost of rent for their properties, and in fact, the outcome may be the complete opposite. Because what we really need is not more regulation in the industry. The tenant protections are there currently to avoid any discrimination for all the protected classes. What we need is incentives to bring the individual homeowner back into the market. And they've been afraid since COVID. Remember, the tenant didn't have to pay rent, the tenant couldn't be evicted, the tenant had more rights to possession of the property than the landlord, and we just keep compiling those restrictions on the landlord. As a realtor, I have a hard time advising California homeowners to keep their property, make it a rental, and have it become passive income or secondary income sources for them, because the laws just don't take into consideration the risk that the small investor takes when he engages in a rental relationship with a tenant in today's environment. And I think, again, we go back to a misconception by our leaders up in Sacramento. I think that the thought process is, and certainly they paint the picture that way, that the typical landlord is a major corporation who has a multitude of income streams coming in through multitude of rental properties, so that they can offset a bad relationship with the profits from the good ones. And that's couldn't be farther from the truth. Typical landlord here in California is not the major corporation. It's a small individual homeowner who upgrades their home and keeps their original home as a rental market as a rental property, and invites tenants to come in and rent, so that they increase, not only pay down the existing mortgage if there is one, but also increase the cash flow, and start to set up for retirement. But if I can't be sure that I can use my property as I want, decide when a contract expires, whether or not I want to continue in this relationship and keep my property on the rental market, I have to tell you, I'm probably not going to be very likely to enter the rental market at all. And that's the exact opposite of what our industry needs if tenants are going to find that equilibrium where they can afford the rent, make the payments on the rent, and have choices to make on which properties in effect they end up renting. So that's it. That's my thought process. Increasing inventory is what we need, and it would go a long way to solving the problems that the legislature currently is trying to solve. And instead, they're just making it worse for all those concerned. And that's it. I'm Frank Spencer, Mr. Chatsworth, and I hope you found this video somewhat informative. So if you like this video and you'd like to see more like it, I'd encourage you to please click subscribe. Now, the next question is, if I left you with more questions than answers, feel free to leave your comments at the bottom, and we will respond just as quickly as you do. I'm Frank Spencer, Mr. Chatsworth, and I appreciate you taking the time to view this video.